All right, let's do this final show of the Kean Sports show with John and Rich, except I am from my bedroom. There is no Rich today. So the mess up last week, I should say, kind of worried me going into the studio again, so I thought I'd just do the final show from my bedroom in this recording device. And that's it, yeah. So we have some really good interviews coming up with Coach Ginex from the men's volleyball team. We have some men's basketball interviews to get to. We're going to have a little quick show to end it up, but that's going to be it. So let's start it off with women's basketball. This is John Mastice on the Kean Sports show. So they got the win over Camden, 77-48. 4 players combined for 65 of the 77 points. That was Casey Filio, who had 20, went 5 for 8 from 3. Shannon McCoy, 20 points. Pace Lang, 15 points. And Danielle Mills had 10 points off the bench. So, again, that's where 65 of the 77 points came. They moved to 7-1, 5-0 in the NJAC. And now they go on their winter break where they'll play Cabrini tomorrow. I'm sitting here on Thursday, so December 20th is tomorrow, Friday. They're at Cabrini. Then on the 29th, they go to Salem, Virginia for a tournament. They'll play Mary Washington. There's 2 more teams that they would face depending on the outcome of that game. So we'll see about that. I can't remember the team. I think one is Worcester State, and I can't remember the other one. And then they play Lehman College in the Bronx on January 3rd, and then it's back at it against the NJAC. So when they come back against the NJAC, they have Stockton, but after that, it's William Patterson and Rowan. William Patterson sits at 4-1. Rowan sits at 5-0. So it should be interesting. And then they play TCNJ, who sits at 3-1. So after Stockton's a good team. They're not like a bad team, but after Stockton, they play 3 teams that have a combined NJAC record of 12-2. So they'll be challenged right out of the break in the NJAC, and I'm sure Coach Mandy King will have her girls ready for those games. They're looking good so far, sharing the basketball. Obviously, against Camden, they had 4 players score 65 of the 77 points. It's a little worrisome, but we've seen them go deep down the bench this year, so I'm not worried at all. They can get points from anywhere, anytime. They're a really good team, and I think they're going to be competing for an NJAC title, hopefully. I'm excited to get back to calling those games. So, really cool stuff. Let's move on, because men's basketball, who I have the interviews with coming up, with Coach Adam Hutchinson, and then the players, Jeff Cooper, Nate Lyles, Jailen Jamison, and Myles Owens. They gave me some really, really good stuff to go off of, but yeah, they lost to Rutgers Camden. That's one of the games where I thought, they could win. They're coming off a big win against Ramapo. They got to 1-3. Camden was a beatable team for them. But again, not a good first half. They get outscored 40-28. Much better second half, but too little too late. So Kean drops to 2-8, 1-4 in the NJAC. Tough loss. In the loss, Jailen Jamison, 15 points, 7 rebounds, only 2 assists. 10 points for Cooper, 7 for Blunt, Miller 7. Nate Lyles, 13 points, but obviously it was a tough night scoring the Rock. They only had 63 points. They only gave up 68, so they were in it at the end. A couple late baskets from Camden sealed it. They got it within 1 with, I think, a minute to go or something like that. But in the end, it was just a little too late on the run. When you go down Kean's schedule, and I said this before, we're talking about the men's team right now. This is a good team. This is a very athletic team. They can shoot the ball really well on some nights. And you've seen that. They did it against Ramapo. They played tough against Rutgers Newark, who's one of the top teams in the league right now. They did it against Colby, who's 19th in the country right now. They played tight with Widener, who's getting votes nationally. This is a team that can beat anyone on any given night, but there's some nights where they just go cold from the field. And, that could happen with any team. It could happen with any team, any night. But when you look down the schedule, Camden was one of the games you circled where, well, they can win that game. You can make an argument they're a better team than Camden. I think, they'll beat them when they come back here, hopefully. But, when you're looking at a team like Kean, you're going down the schedule, circling games. This is a game they can win. This is a game they should win. This is a game, well, they're going to have trouble with. Camden was one of those games that they should have won, I believe. But give credit to Camden. They had a big first half. They made shots down the stretch when they needed to, and they came out with a 68-63 win. Tough one for Kean. Again, they dropped to 1-4 in conference, 2-8 overall. But the interviews went really, really well. I liked what I heard from Jeff, Nate, Myles, and Jailen. The questions I was really interested with were for Jeff and Myles because they're the only upperclassmen on the team. They have to, get these underclassmen ready. This is a very young team, so a lot of what Jeff and Myles are doing, and Myles has one more year, obviously. He's only a junior. Jeff is a senior. A lot of what they're doing is going to be helping this program for the future, and you'll hear Adam Hutchinson as well in the interviews. He gave some really good answers, so why don't you take a listen, and we'll be back after that. All right, Coach Hutch. Take the record off the table. How have you seen these four guys in the room and the rest of the team improve this season? Because we see the flashes of it in games against very good teams like a Widener and a Kobe.
Yeah, there's been growth. So, I would say this time last year, for example, Jailen's assist-to-turnover ratio might have been just under 1-to-1. Now it's 2-to-1. He's definitely grown as a help defender in the time that I've known him. And you can see his process by which he learns. Nate is a more versatile player now than he was this time last year. He's certainly more versatile, I'd say, now than he was even at the beginning of this season. Cooper Myles, I think it kind of speaks for itself, given where they ended last season and their level of productivity thus far this season. So, there's progress happening.
If I were to tell you 2 years ago after you got hired, you would have 2 wins in your first 2 years against a Ramapo team that was in the Final Four not too long ago, what does that say about you as a coach and your staff going out and getting guys that are going to help you level up with the rest of the conference?
I don't really think about what it says about me. I've had wins against the second-ranked team in the country. So I've been there, done that. But I think that for the guys in the locker room, it doesn't matter if I've experienced it. They have to experience it. And so that win against Ramapo last year for them was, okay, we got one. Like, we didn't just beat a team that was downtrodden. You beat a team that knows how to win. You beat a program. And so I think for them, they drew a tremendous amount of confidence from that. And you could see it kind of moving forward. Now, the inverse is also true. When you lose, it's like getting punched in the head, and you kind of lose your way a little bit. So this next win, the most recent one against Ramapo, I think also really helps the guys mentally.
Outside of the 4 guys in this room, you clearly have a ton of players contributing up and down your bench. You go pretty deep with guys like Tyrese Johnson, Kendall Blunt, Jared Latane, and so on. How important is it on this team to play your role night in and night out to get the job done?
I think that's true in any team. I think that, if you really think about a basketball team, everybody has to give a little bit so that every other person can be themselves. And so, for example, Jared has willingly given some things and said, okay, I know I can do that, but I'm not going to do that, to allow other people to play to their potential. And I think up and down the roster, guys are engaged in the process of figuring that out.
You've been in a handful of tight games this season against some pretty good competition, like a Widener team or a Kobe team who's ranked top 20 in the country. Does that say to you that you can play with anyone and knock off anyone in this conference on any given night?
To be honest, my expectation was that we could play with anybody coming into the year. I knew, physically, talent-wise, I thought I had a pretty good idea of who we were. But in order to win games, you can't beat yourself. You got to eliminate mistakes. And, we have these moments where our inexperience shows. And good teams will make you pay for that sometimes. Great teams will make you pay for that every time. I think we've played, our schedule has been good to great, and, the good teams have made us pay some of the time. I would say that Kobe made us pay a lot when we made mistakes. So the hope is that our guys are able to look at the level of competition we've played at and figure out, okay, well, here are the things that we could have controlled that we didn't, and control those things moving forward. If we just look and say we lost and chalk it up and forget about it, we don't draw the lesson from it, then we'll remain an inexperienced team. But if we're able to draw the lessons from it, and I don't think we've fully done that yet, but if we are, that's when you'll see us make a jump.
Yeah, let's go back to that inexperience, because, some stretches your team will look like top talent team in this conference. Other stretches through games, you go cold, transition defense sometimes lackadaisical. Do you think that comes with just, the young talent you have on the team growing, and it'll get better as, they go through the years here?
Well, one thing life has taught me is things get better when I make it better. And so, our team has to take that approach. And we can't wait for the feeling to strike us. We have to do first. We'll feel good later, So, you don't always feel inspired when you wake up in the morning. You don't always feel inspired when you get out of bed. Like, those are Hallmark cards. The thing that separates you is on the days when you don't feel inspired, and the moments when you don't feel motivated, do you do anyway, And that's where we're struggling. Talent-wise, we're fine, but we are focused on, well, here's how I feel, here's what I think. And that's human. We're all human. But if you're talking about winning and losing, it really doesn't matter at all. Like, what matters is, did you do? And again, in those moments where we chose not to do, the Kobe's of the world made us pay, And so the hope is that we mature, we embrace that outlook, we embrace that level of responsibility, that level of self-discipline. We're not where we want to be in those regards, but we're not where we were.
Thanks, Coach.
All
right, Jeff. Your playing time in production has gone up tremendously this season. What kind of work did you put in during the off season to be able to make such a huge jump in your senior season, especially from beyond the arc where you're shooting close to 50%?
One of the biggest things I try to work on is conditioning, to make sure that I can come into the season in great shape, so I'm able to play longer and I'm able to make those shots, and then also just working on shooting and lifting, a lot of stuff like that.
Your team had a tournament earlier this season at Moravian, won a game, lost to a very good Widener team, and you had yourself a pretty good tournament, averaging 17 a game. How fun was it playing right down the road from your hometown of Easton in Wilson Area High School in a season where it seems to be all coming together for you?
It was a lot of fun, especially since we don't get the chance to play a lot of Pennsylvania schools, and actually I know a couple people on Moravian that I played in high school, so I really enjoyed being able to play against them again.
Myles, again for you, your role has drastically increased on this team. Minutes are up a ton as well. How has Coach Hutch and the rest of the coaching staff prepared you for this moment and taking on a much bigger role in this team?
Just working hard in the off season, both on and off the court. So a lot of film sessions, a lot of just being able to execute, knowing what to do, knowing how to, just being confident, shooting the ball well and stuff like that.
You started 4 games this year, but coming off the bench against Ramapo, you ended up scoring 14 points. You came off the bench against Widener, you had 17. What seems to be working for you in terms of your overall play when you come off the bench and get hot? Do you see the court better? Do you have more favorable matchups?
I mean, it's just whatever's better for me. It's just whatever the role my coach wants me to play, whether it's starting or coming off the bench. Just whatever role I gotta play, I'm able to do. So.
And then for Jeff and Myles here, Myles, you go first. You two are the only upperclassmen on this very young team. Now, how have you helped some of the younger guys like Nate and Jailen and everyone else adjust to the college game and get them ready for their next 3 years at the collegiate level?
Just tell them to play hard. You know what I mean? We're an underdog team. You know, we're a bunch of young guys, so the best we can do is just tell them to play hard, play smart, play together, play as a unit. Because, I mean, that's kind of hard to do, especially when you're coming straight out of, out of high school. So we just tell them to play hard, play together, so we can get some wins.
Like Myles said, play hard and then also focus. Coming into the college game, you got to be really focused on what you're doing and make sure you guys are executing. So every day in practice, we have to be locked in.
All right, thank you. Nate, for me, you were the player of the game against Ramapo. You stepped it up down the stretch, kept possessions alive, you had some big buckets, and it seems like your motor doesn't really stop. What is your approach late in games when your team needs to get that extra possession or that crucial stop?
Well, the biggest thing is to leave it all on the court. You can't really do anything after the game is over, after the clock hits 0. So I tell my teammates to leave it all on the court, put all the effort out there, and my teammates help me play better. So I think that's what you saw in the Ramapo game.
You're one of many underclassmen on this team, so you've been through all the ups and downs early on in the building process. In what area do you see this team improving on every time you guys step on the court, whether it has to do with the game itself or off the court, building that chemistry?
Well, it's definitely coming together and believing in each other and our ability and our teamwork and our effort on the court. Believing is on the court and also it's off the court. It's in practices, it's in the classroom. It's believing in each other's effort.
All right. Jailen, you're coming off an NJAC Rookie of the Year season that we saw you fill up the stats sheet almost every night. Coming into the season, did you feel any added pressure to build on that season, knowing that other teams would have you on their scouting report at the top of that list?
I wouldn't feel like it was like a bad pressure. I would just feel like it was motivation, knowing that I can't really have a bad night, knowing that like most of the eyes are on me. So I just try to keep everybody together.
Back to you filling up the box score. You've shown the ability to fill it up, but also dish it out some sick passes. Is it more satisfying to you to get a highlight reel pass or a game where you're red hot shooting the ball?
Probably passing, because when I get everybody involved, it's just easier for us to just get into our offense.
Your dad is very active on social media. He's at every game. He's obviously extremely proud of you. How much has your dad helped you in this journey to becoming a college basketball player?
Definitely a big part, but not only him, also my mom, just putting the ball in my hands since I was like 3 and just helping me.
All right. Thanks, boys. All right, we're back here. Second take here. We're going over the interviews real quick. Again, I want to thank Coach Adam Hutchinson, the players Jeff Cooper, Nate Lyles, Jailen Jamison, and Myles Owens for doing that. One of the answers that, I kind of correlated it with Coach Hutch and Myles Owens. I asked Myles about coming off the bench, and, he seems to have some better games coming off the bench. It's true. He had 17 against Ramapo, 14 against Widener. And he mentioned, the role that he's playing. And I asked Coach about how important, it is to play roles on this team. And he said it's important for every club to play their role to help the team win. So I kind of like what Myles said, whatever to help the team. I think he's better off coming off the bench. I see him a little more confidence, shooting the ball maybe, starting on the bench. He sees the flow of the game better. He comes in, he knows what he has to do. He's a really, really good shooter from beyond the arc. He's got a sweet lefty stroke. Shout out to all the lefties out there because I'm a lefty. But, yeah, so Myles looking good. Jeff had some really good answers about helping the team, helping the younger players. Nate with his motor never stopping. Good stuff there. And Jailen, I had to ask him about his dad because his dad is so active on social media. He's at every game. He's such a huge supporter of Jailen, which we love to see. And he's balling out this year. He's coming off that Rookie of the Year for the NJAC. And it seems like he hasn't lost a step. And he's at the top of team scouting reports. They're honing in on this kid because of the season he had in his first year. So you love to see him stepping up this year and really picking up where he left off. Obviously, a tough game against Camden. Whenever you see Jailen end a game with only 2 assists, it's he had a tough game because he's averaging like 5, 6, 7 dimes a game. Beautiful passes. Of course, he was on ESPN last week with that beautiful pass to Blunt. So he's balling out this year. This team's going to be really good. It's going to be really good in the coming years. I think they're good right now. I think they're gonna beat some teams that they're not expected to beat in the second half of the NJAC season. They're going to be making some noise. Hopefully they can, go on a winning streak, try and get to that top 6 seed in the NJAC tournament. That would be pretty cool. It's going to be tough. Obviously, losing 4 of your first 5 doesn't help, but there's plenty of games left to make up ground. Plenty of games left. They were close in almost every game. I think the NJ City game was a little overwhelming for them because of how highly touted New Jersey City was going into the game. Since then, they have dropped off. They haven't played well. I think the next time around that, they could play with them. Montclair State was not a good game, but the other 3 games, they were in it against Rutgers Newark, who's at the top of the conference. They were in it against Camden. They beat Ramapo. This is going to be a team that gets a lot more wins, and, I'm excited to see the rest of the games this year. So, let's move on to football. As Dante Capanzoli was nominated for the Cliff Harris Award, not a huge surprise. He was a beast this year, and he's coming back for his senior year. ECACs came out. Deshaun Reed made first-team defense. Anthony Bassani, first-team defense. Dante Capanzoli made second-team defense, which makes absolutely no sense to me considering that he won NJAC Defensive Player of the Year. He was first-team All-NJAC. He's nominated for Cliff Harris Award. So I don't know how ECACs put him in the second team, but, still congrats to him. Reed first team, Bassani first team. Dante Jamison made second team special teams, so that's awesome for him. He was really good return man for Kean this year. And shout out to Matt Kreider because that's 2 first team defenses, 1 second team, and obviously Capanzoli was a beast this year, so I'm not going to pay too much attention to the second team selection. Obviously should have been first, but shout out to Matt Kreider because his defense had some really, really good ball players on their team this year. Defense played good in spots. They had some tough games, obviously. What defense doesn't? But almost every Saturday, Friday, whatever it was, Friday against Del Val, but every Saturday they showed up. They played very tough. They competed on every down, and I think that's a testament to how Matt Kreider gets them ready. Matt Kreider's defensive coordinator for Kean, and interviewed him earlier this season. Love what I heard from him. He's a really good coach, cares about his players. So that was really cool. Other than that, in the NJAC, we'll go around ECACs. William Patterson's running back, Tyreek Riddick, won Offensive Rookie of the Year for the ECACs. He also made second team offensive player. First team all offense other than William Patterson. Peel, the wide receiver from Wesley. Norwood, the offensive lineman from Salisbury. Bradford, the offensive lineman from Wesley. Patrick Bernardo, second team defense. He's the linebacker from Salisbury. And Andrew Anthony made second team defense. He is the linebacker from William Patterson. So the NJAC well represented in the ECAC award. So let's move on from football. I got a chance to sit down with Coach Charlie Ginex from the men's volleyball team. Let's take a listen to Coach Ginex. All right, Coach, your offseason has been eventful with a lot of movement. You'll have a much different lineup come mid-January than you did last season. What are you expecting from this group?
I mean, we're always expecting pretty much the same things every year. We're looking to come in as a group and hopefully work hard, and and if we do that, I think at the end of the day, we're going to hopefully achieve our goals. You had mentioned the movement and whatnot, and our lineup being different. I think, we had, as I'm sure many people on this campus are aware, we had one of our players, Steven Zarzitsky, was diagnosed with cancer back in April of last year, and at the end of the day, he went through a process where he had to get himself better, and fortunately we're in a position where he is healthy now, and but what that did for him was it cost him to have to forego his senior season, take the year off, take care of himself, get healthy. And the seniors that are on the team that have been friends with him for years and years have just decided to support him and take the year off as well, and come back and play with him next year in what will be his then senior year. So that is going to cause some change this year, but it's a challenge that we're looking forward to. I think we're going to have some opportunities for some other guys, and that's the way we're looking at it. We're not looking at this in any way that is negative in any way, but yet a positive and an opportunity for other people to step up.
We know some of the big hitters on your team. Give a name that is going to surprise some people on the court this season from maybe your sophomore class or your freshman class.
It's a little early to tell, to be honest. We had 5 weeks of practice in the fall, and there were times when our practices may have been a little skewed. And one of the reasons for that is we did have the seniors in the gym with us in the fall. They were able to participate in fall practices, even though they're not going to play this season. So, as the fall went on, for example, the last week of practice, we asked those seniors to not participate so we could kind of at least get 1 week of a look at what we're going to have in the gym in January. And we have some young talent for sure. We brought in some really good recruits from different parts of the country, and we have some talent, but I think it's just a little too early for me to just put one name out there right now.
You coached under Don Perkins. From the first few seasons, how much did that help you in relation to exposure to the college game?
So Don is one of my very good friends and has been for obviously a very long time, and I got an opportunity actually before Don to go work at Rutgers Newark with what their men's team was then Division I, and that was a brief 1 year opportunity for me, and then I was able to come over here and work under Don, like you said. And Don is a little bit of I think a different coach than I am in a lot of ways, and but it allowed me to see things from a different perspective through his eyes sometimes, and I think he and I worked really well together in that regard because we are a little bit different. So just being able to work with him and see things differently, I think allowed me to kind of grow as a coach early on in my career.
Your record speaks for yourself. You win almost everywhere you go, going back to your high school days at Randolph and Hackettstown. How do you go about building a winning culture here at Kean or wherever you go?
I think a competitive environment is a big part of it. I think one of the things we strive to do really well every year is to bring kids in that are going to want to compete every day. And because we have that kind of environment and that kind of culture that we've built along, over the years, when we get into the gym for practice, we have that competitive environment. And I think that therefore allows us to get the most out of our players. Because they are competing not only for playing time for a job, but for each other. And I think at the end of the day, if they're going to compete for each other, then we're going to have we're going to grow as a team. And I can honestly say that in every year I've been here, going back to even when I was working with Don, there's no doubt in my mind that come April we've always been way better than we were in January. And I think that's just a testament to how hard the guys work every day and that competitiveness.
Conference preseason voting hasn't come out yet, but what do you expect to see competition level-wise from the CVC and the NJAC this season?
So starting with the NJAC, since that is our home conference for most sports, the NJAC, Rutgers, Ramapo, Jersey City, all of our competitors in the NJAC are all, I think, really poised to take the next step. I think last year we saw some really big improvements from all three of those programs, specifically Rutgers. I know some of the recruits that Ramapo has on campus now that we may have been looking at as well. So I know they have some talent. They've been improving on a yearly basis. So I think the NJAC's going to be very competitive this year. I really do. I think last year we were fortunate to be able to go 3-0 in the NJAC and win the NJAC outright. But I think this year is going to be tough, and I think there's going to be some pretty good competition for sure. And then when you consider our NCAA qualifying conference, the CVC, the Continental Volleyball Conference, Southern Virginia won the conference last year. Juniata beat us in the semifinals last year, and I know they returned most of their team. Southern Virginia returns most of their team. Marymount maybe had a little bit of a down year, if you want to call it a down year. They were still very good last year, but they're going to be back, and I anticipate better than they were last year. So not to single out those three teams, because I think the conference from top to bottom is certainly pretty good and one of the best in the country, but I think those three are going to be very good and poised to make a run at it. If we're going to be where we want to be at the end of the season, we're going to have to make sure that we're working hard every day to compete with those teams.
Let's talk about player development, because there's going to be a lot of development with your freshmen and sophomores this year. Kamil Garbowski, he inked a pro contract in Germany last season. Talk to me about his player progression since you originally recruited him and how you helped him become the player he is today.
So Kamil is it's kind of a different situation, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. You know, Kamil lived 20, 30 minutes down the road here. He's from Clifton, and we had been watching Kamil play in high school. And if I'm being really honest, there were times when I wasn't even sure how good Kamil would end up being. But he had something about him. He had a pure athleticism that you can't teach. The kid just was explosive and extremely dynamic, and we asked him to come on board, and he came here, and he, you know, worked his butt off, really, in a sense, for 4 years. I mean, this is a kid that his freshman year was just very coachable, took everything we gave him, but didn't really get much playing time his freshman year. And a lot of that, I think, is just because it wasn't his fault or anything other than the fact that we've always had very good middles in our gym, and we've had a lot of All-American middles in our gym over the years, and I think the number is like 5 or something like that have played that position. So he was always behind guys that were just really, really good. And by his sophomore year, you started to see that improvement. But again, he had guys ahead of him that were very, very good. And then his junior season, again, the growth continued, but he was playing on a team that essentially had 2 All-Americans as seniors. He finally got his shot his senior year. He walked on the court. He dominated. He took over, albeit only 1 year for him as a starter, but he made the most of it. He actually was first-team All-American last year, named top middle blocker in the country by Off the Block, which is a really popular volleyball blog out there. And then, like you said, inked that pro contract over in Germany, and we couldn't be more proud of him.
Your freshman and sophomore group is going to get a lot of valuable playing time this year against some nationally ranked competition. In the long term, it will be a big asset with a lot of playing time under their belts. But how do you manage the adjustment period for such young players going into the college level?
So I think there's a couple things here that we're talking about. I mean, we are going to have young guys playing and maybe playing more than we normally would. With a program like ours, we have talent in the gym through all the classes for sure. We don't really, I tell people all the time when we don't recruit practice players. We recruit guys that we want to commit and we want them to compete for a job from day one. So we always have talent even in the freshman, sophomore class every year. We regularly will end up with at least 1, if not 2 freshmen that will probably start for us on an annual basis. This year, that number might be more. It could be 3, 4. In fact, my wife and I had a conversation this week where I think we counted maybe 5 freshmen could end up starting. We'll see. But it's going to be a challenge for sure, but I think it's one that they're excited about. I know myself and the staff are really excited. We're going to embrace it. It's going to be something that's a little bit different for us, because we aren't going to have those seniors in the gym that we consistently have had with regards to leadership and experience. But there's an opportunity, like we talked about, for these young guys, and they're going to kind of get thrown into the fire a little bit, and hopefully they're going to learn on the job fast. And I think it's going to be good for us. And, you mentioned long-term being a big asset. I think this year it will be really good for us come middle of the year, end of the year, and then down the road, not to get ahead of ourselves, but, when you talk about their sophomore year, next year and beyond, they're going to have had that experience playing in a varsity collegiate experience, so it's going to be good for them.
Let's circle back. You mentioned leadership. Do you think your team has enough leadership on the team when times get tough this season? And they will, like every team. Do you think your team has enough leadership that they could get through those tough spots?
Actually, yeah, I think our leadership this year is probably, in my opinion, stronger than it's been in a while. I think the guys that we have in the gym, leaders aren't always seniors, and I think some of the players that we have in our gym, and I could specifically think of a couple juniors, for example, that I think are outstanding leaders. They're guys that everyone else looks up to. There's guys that everyone respects. Those are guys that the coaching staff has a really great relationship with. So I do think that our leadership this year is going to be arguably better than it's actually been in the last couple of years.
Talk to me about the schedule you have this year. You always have one of the toughest schedules in the country. Talk to me about the programs you're going up against and the challenges you'll face, starting with, the Clash at Kean.
Yeah, so the Clash at Kean is obviously one of our premier events that we host here from a volleyball standpoint, and maybe arguably from an athletic standpoint every year. We love hosting that. I try my best to try to get some of the best teams in the country to come in every year and compete and have all these great teams playing in one gym on one stage. Even though it's early in the season, I think it ends up being a pretty good forecaster for how the landscape of Division III volleyball will be as the season unfolds. So, for example, we opened the season with 3 teams on that opening weekend, January 17th and 18th, and I believe, I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure all 3 teams were ranked at some point in the top 5 in the nation last year. So we're going to have some tough matches to open the season right away. There's no doubt about it. I think that next week we play another team that won their conference championship in St. Joe's, Long Island. The following Friday after that, we play SUNY New Paltz, who won a national championship last year. So, our schedule is littered with national contenders for sure. I don't know what the exact number is, but my guess is we're probably playing somewhere around 12 to 14 teams that were nationally ranked last year. That's on top of our conference schedule that we know is really hard. So it's going to be a challenge for us, but I believe in playing the best teams to improve your own team, and we're not going to get better by playing teams that aren't going to give us a challenge. So we're excited for those things coming down the road, and it's one of those where I think we're going to just have to work hard and come every day to practice, work hard, show up to every match, play our best, work our hardest, and hopefully at the end of the year it'll pay dividends.
Thanks for doing this, Coach.
Appreciate it.
So again, shout out Charlie Ginex for sitting down, the men's volleyball head coach. Love what I heard from him. Obviously, a tough off season, but I feel like he's going to have his players ready, and I'm excited to call some men's volleyball action because I told this story before. The first time I ever watched a volleyball game was the first women's volleyball game I ever called, and for Don Perkins, and his team was really entertaining this year. So I got a lot into the volleyball scene. Very entertaining sport. You got people diving around all the floor. So the men's team obviously going to bring it this year. They're always good. Again, tough off season, having some players sit out, but I think they'll be ready. I think they'll be competitive, and they go right at it right away. They got the clash at Kean starting on January 17th against Benedictine. Saturday, they'll have 2 games on the 18th against Stevenson and Stevens. A lot of Stevens and Stevensons in there. But should be fun. Excited to call those games. And then, CVC and NJAC play would be upon them. They played at New Paltz, which is the defending national champions. They have a really tough schedule. And, they have to schedule tough. They play Endicott. They play Southern Virginia, obviously. All these good teams, Juniata. Very good teams. They'll be challenged this year, but I'm sure Coach Ginex is up for the challenge. So let's finish it up real quick. Baseball, number 5 in a poll that I'm about to bring up right here. What is it? I just saw it. All right, I can't find it now, but they were number 5 in some poll, some capacity. There it is. Baseball tapped 5th in the collegiate baseball NCAA Division III preseason poll. Obviously, they're thinking high of them. The other 4 teams above them were Chapman from California, Webster from Missouri, Heidelberg from Ohio, and Trinity, Texas. And then there is Kean, New Jersey, sitting there with 274 points. So, should be cool. Other NJAC teams that got some votes. Rowan was 35th with 187 votes. And then there was one more team, I believe, that I can't find at the moment that was in the NJAC. Let's see. No, nothing. I can't find. I thought it was William Patterson, but I could be wrong. There's Shenandoah, who's 34. They eliminated Kean last year in the Super Regional or Regional. So, Kean baseball up and coming. Should be fun. They'll be here before you know it. Let's get to some closing thoughts. Again, this is the last episode till the new year. We'll see what the future holds. We're probably going to go more to a podcast thing in the spring. Still be calling games with Kevin. I think I'm going to try and get Kevin on some future episodes. I'm graduating, so I won't be around Kean as much, but I'll still be calling Kean athletic games, which I love this semester. Met some phenomenal people. And shout out to all the coaches that came on the show, all the student athletes that came on the show, because they're what made the show go every week. Every week we got some great content from teams in the fall sports, and there's so many people to thank. I'd be here forever, but you know who you are. Thanks again. And, this has been John Mastice. Final show of the Kean Sports Show with John and Rich. Of course, shout out to my partner, Rich Zeller, Kevin Meehan, who did some episodes, Rob Bergman, who was there in the studio every week helping me out. They were awesome helping me get this done. I had so much help doing this show, so much fun doing this show. And, after New Year, we'll see what's up. This has been John Mastice on the Kean Sports Show. Signing off. Take it easy, everyone.